In a packed courtroom, white cops storm in, dragging a black judge from her bench in cuffs, an illegal, racist power grab caught on camera. Chaos erupts, but hours later, she returns, robe on, gavel in hand, and orders their arrest. Justice strikes back, humiliation flips, authority shifts. What drove this clash? What's next in a city on edge? Dive into a gripping tale of defiance, retribution, and an ending that leaves you questioning. Watch now. Judge Naomi Carter stood behind her bench, the Asheville courthouse's oak walls glowing under soft, recessed lights, her black robe a mantle of hard-earned authority. At 48, she carried a regal calm, her braids swept into a tight bun, her dark eyes sharp with focus, cutting through the room's humid haze. The courtroom buzzed, locals in faded jeans, lawyers in rumpled suits, a few reporters with notepads, packed into the pews for a routine drug case, the air thick despite the whirring ceiling fans. She tapped her gavel once, crisp and clear, the sound slicing the chatter like a blade through cloth. "State v. Thompson, proceed," she said, her voice steady, resonant, a beacon in the crowded space. Years as a public defender had forged her facing down biased cops, crooked systems, courtroom sneers, until she'd claimed this bench 2 years ago. A symbol in a city wrestling with its progressive veneer and stubborn past. Officer Travis Boone, 42, white, broad-shouldered with a linebacker's build, sat in the witness stand, his uniform starched, badge gleaming under the fluorescent glare. He'd arrested the defendant, Malik Thompson, 25, black, lanky, his dreads tied back for possession, claiming he'd found cocaine in his car during a traffic stop. Naomi knew his type, arrogant, quick to assume. A record dotted with complaints she'd poured over in chambers late at night, coffee cooling beside her. She'd ruled against him twice before. Overturned arrests, sloppy work, and his glare now, hard and resentful, told her he hadn't forgotten. "Found the baggie under the seat," Boone said, voice gruff, leaning into the mic, his drawl thick with confidence. He resisted, had to subdue him, got a little rough. Naomi's pen scratched notes on a yellow pad. His report was thin, dashcam conveniently malfunctioning, witnesses absent. The defense attorney, Elise Kendrick, a young white woman with sharp eyes and a ponytail, stood, her heels clicking on the hardwood. "No footage, officer? No witnesses to this resistance?" Boone smirked, faint, his lips twitching. "Don't need 'em, saw it myself. Clear as day." Naomi's eyes narrowed. His tone dripped with the swagger she'd heard too often, a cockiness that grated against her bones. She leaned forward, her robe rustling. "Chain of custody. Where's the evidence log?" Boone shifted, his smirk faltering, a bead of sweat glistening on his temple. "Station's got it, standard procedure," he said, hands resting heavy on the stand, fingers tapping. She tapped her pen, deliberate. "Not in evidence submitted. Explain." His jaw tightened, a flush creeping up his thick neck. "Must have been misplaced," he muttered, voice low, his eyes flicking to the side, evasive. "Caught." Naomi pressed, her voice cool but firm. "Misplaced? That's a critical lapse. How do we verify the baggie's origin?" Boone's flush deepened, his hands clenching the stand, knuckles whitening. "It's mine. I bagged it," he snapped, louder than needed, drawing a murmur from the crowd. Elise jumped in. "No log, no dashcam, your word alone?" Boone's smirk returned, forced. "My word's enough. Always has been." Naomi's pen paused. She'd heard that line before, years back. Defending a kid Boone had pinned with planted weed. His smirk identical then. She'd won that appeal, his case crumbling under scrutiny, his glare burning her from the hall after. Before she could dig deeper, the courtroom doors slammed open, wood banging against plaster with a crack that jolted the room, a shockwave through the pews. 3 white officers stormed in, uniforms crisp, faces set, led by Boone's partner, Officer Greg Vance, 35, lean and wiry, his cold blue eyes glinting with purpose. Gasps, rippled chairs scraped. A reporter's pen froze mid-word. A woman in the back dropping her purse with a thud. "Judge Carter, you're under arrest," Vance barked, striding down the aisle, handcuffs glinting in his hand, his boots pounding the floor. Naomi's gavel froze midair, her breath catching sharp in her chest, her pulse spiking. "Excuse me," she said, voice low, steel threading through it, her eyes narrowing to slits. The crowd hushed, a thick silence falling, broken only by the fan's hum. Vance smirked, his voice loud for the room, a taunt. "Assaulting an officer warrants fresh, signed this morning." Boone's lips twitched, a flicker of triumph flashing across his broad face, his badge a taunt now. Naomi stood, robe swaying, her gaze slicing through them like a blade through fog. "Show it," she said, her tone calm but unyielding, a command rooted deep. The crowd leaned forward, eyes wide, breaths held. Vance hesitated. Just a beat, then tossed a paper onto her bench, crumpled, ink smudged, the edges curling. She snatched it, scanned it, unsigned. No judge's seal. A forgery screaming from the page, amateur and bold. "This is illegal," she said, her voice rising, firm, resonant. "You're disrupting my court leave now, or face consequences." Vance stepped closer, cuffs dangling, his smirk widening. "Not asking, Judge." The crowd erupted shouts, piercing the air, a woman in a sundress crying, "This ain't right!" Elise sprang up, her chair tipping back. "Objection! This is outrageous, an abuse of power!" Naomi raised her hand. Silence fell, brittle as glass, her authority a tether in the storm. "Officers, you're in contempt," she warned, her tone a gavel's echo, her eyes locking Vance's, daring him. He lunged, grabbing her arm, yanking her from the bench with a grunt, his grip iron tight. Her gavel clattered to the floor, wood splintering with a sharp snap, rolling under the desk. Two officers flanked her hands rough, one grabbing her other arm, the third shoving her forward, dragging her toward the aisle. Cuffs snapped tight on her wrists, metal biting her skin, cold and sharp. Boone stood, smirking wide now, his chest puffed, watching like a king reclaiming his turf. The room exploded, screams tearing through, phones thrust up filming, a man in a plaid shirt shouting, "Racism, plain as damn day." A woman near the front sobbed, "No, no, no!" Naomi's heels scraped the hardwood, her robe tangling around her legs, fabric ripping at the hem, but her face stayed stone eyes locked on Vance, burning with a quiet, unyielding fury. "You'll regret this," she said, voice low, a promise cutting through the chaos, steady despite the hands wrenching her arms. They hauled her down the aisle, her head high, her gaze unbroken past Elisa's stunned face, past the crowd's outrage, past Boone's triumphant sneer. The doors banged shut behind her, wood slamming with a final thud, her silhouette vanishing into the hall, leaving the courtroom reeling in stunned silence. Boone's laugh, a harsh, jagged note fading into the hum, the splintered gavel lying still. The precinct holding cell smelled of bleach and rust, the concrete cold against Naomi's back as she sat, still in her torn robe, cuffs off but wrists raw, red marks blooming where metal had bitten. Hours stretched 4, 5, the clock a blur through the bars, her mind racing, piecing it together like a case she'd once argued. Boone and Vance retaliation, pure and ugly, fueled by her rulings, her presence, her skin. She'd overturned Boone's cases twice. Sloppy arrests, planted evidence, his word shredded in appeals. And he'd cornered her in the courthouse hall, months back, his bulk looming, his voice a growl. "You don't belong up there, lady. Keep pushing, you'll see." She'd stared him down, unflinching. "Try me." Vance, his shadow, had a rep 2 rough stops, unchecked force, a duo drunk on power in a city that too often looked away. The warrant fake, rushed, tossed together in a back room, meant they'd gambled big, banking on fear to silence her, on Asheville's old habits to let it slide. She'd seen it before, years defending kids like Malik, watching cops like Boone smirk through lies, juries nodding at badges over truth. Now, they'd turned it on her, arrogance and racism braided tight, a rope they thought would hold. Her fingers traced the robe's tear. Her calm, deepening anger simmered. But strategy ruled. A fire banked for the right moment. Outside, Asheville-ignited protests sparked downtown, spilling from Pack Square to the courthouse steps, voices chanting, "No justice, no peace." Phones buzzed with courtroom clips, grainy, shaky. Black judge dragged out cops gone wild. The hashtags trending. Hashtag justice for Carter climbing fast. The chief, Dan Hargrove, a graying man with tired eyes and a smoker's rasp, stormed into the cell block, keys jangling in his meaty hand, his uniform wrinkled from a long day. "Carter, what the hell happened?" he barked, unlocking the door with a clang, his breath heavy with coffee and stress. She stood, robe wrinkled but posture unbroken, her height matching his. "Your officers, Boone and Vance, forged a warrant, assaulted me in my court," she said, voice steady, handing him the crumpled paper, her fingers brushing its smudged ink. He scanned it, unsigned, no seal. A rookie's mistake magnified by malice, his face darkening, a vein pulsing at his temple. "This is bullshit," he muttered, rubbing his jaw, stubble rasping under his fingers. "They're suspended now pending review." She nodded, her gaze piercing, unwavering. "Not enough, Dan. They broke the law felonies, not slaps on the wrist. I'll handle it my way." Hargrove sighed, heavy, his shoulders slumping. "City's on edge protests, media swarming. You sure you want to push this?" She straightened her robe, smoothing the tear, her calm a wall no crack could breach. "Justice doesn't bend, not for them, not for anyone." He stepped back, keys clinking, his boots scuffing the floor, and she walked out, head high, the precinct's fluorescent glare harsh against her resolve, her torn hem trailing like a battle flag. Back at the courthouse, the crowd swelled, hundreds spilling across the lawn, signs waving. "Protect black judges. Cops ain't kings." Inside, the courtroom simmered. Locals packed tighter, elbow to elbow. Reporters cramming the back row, air electric with rage and anticipation. The fans hum, drowned by whispers. Naomi entered through the side door, robe smoothed. A fresh one pulled from her office. Gavel reclaimed, splintered, but hers. Its cracks, a testament. The bailiff, James, a burly black man who had nodded at her daily, his graying beard framing a quiet pride, called out, "All rise." His voice boomed, steady, a lifeline in the storm. She ascended the bench, her presence a thunderclap. Silence fell, heavy, reverent, the room holding its breath. Boone sat in the gallery, uniform swapped for a faded polo, his broad frame slouched, his smirk gone, eyes darting like a trapped animal's. Vance slouched beside him, pale, hands twitching in his lap, his lean face drawn tight. She tapped her gavel once, sharp, the crack a reclaiming, wood against wood echoing through the space. "Court resumes," she said, voice clear, filling the room, her tone a lifeline and a blade. Officers Boone and Vance stand. They rose, slow, reluctant, Boone's flush returning. A red tide up his neck, Vance's jaw clenching, his knuckles white. The crowd held its breath, phones thrust up, filming, lenses glinting in the light. "You illegally entered my courtroom," she began, her tone measured, cutting like glass through the tension. "Forged a warrant, assaulted me, disrupted justice itself. This is contempt, beyond contempt, a crime." Boone shifted, his mouth opening. Vance elbowed him, hard, silencing him, their eyes flickering with panic. She held up the paper, crumpled, damning, its smudges stark under the courtroom lights. "This is no warrant. It's a lie, a forgery under oath. Explain yourselves now." Her voice rose, steel threading it, her gaze pinning them where they stood. Boone's voice rasped, unsteady, breaking the hush. It was a mistake. Thought we had caused assault complaint from a call." Vance nodded, quick, desperate. "Yeah, acted fast. Protocol got messy." Naomi's eyes narrowed, lies, thin as tissue, crumbling under her stare. No complaint exists, she said, her voice rising, resonant, a judge's command and a woman's fury. I checked station logs, nothing. You acted on arrogance, racism, and abused your power, thinking I'd break. The law doesn't bend for you, not here, not ever. The crowd murmured agreement, swelling, a low rumble of anger and awe, hands tightening on phones. She leaned forward, her robe a wall of black, her voice a gavel's echo. Officer Vance, you're under arrest for contempt, assault on a judicial officer, forgery of legal documents. Bailiff, cuff him. James moved fast, his boots thudding, cuffs snapping on Vance's wrist with a metallic snap, his face whitening, a yelp escaping. This ain't fair, you can't! Boone stepped back, eyes wide. James grabbed him next, his grip iron. You two contempt, aiding and abetting, conspiracy. Boone struggled, red-faced, his bulk twisting. You can't! I'm a cop, damn it! Naomi's gavel hit hard, final, the splintered wood cracking louder. No one's above the law, not me, not you, she said, her voice a beacon, ringing out, steady and unshaken. The crowd roared, cheers erupting, gasps piercing through, phones shaking as they filmed, reporters scribbling furiously, chaos surging, then settling as James dragged them out, Vance stumbling, Boone's boots scraping, their exit mirroring her own hours before. A poetic twist in the courthouse's dim light. A woman in the front row clapped, tears streaking her face. Others joined, a wave of sound crashing over the room, fading into a reverent hush as Naomi sat, her gavel resting, her presence reclaiming the space entire. The courtroom emptied slow whispers, lingered like smoke. A woman in a sundress, hugging Naomi's shoulder as she passed. You showed 'em, Judge, God bless you. Another man, gray-haired, gripped her hand. Asheville's proud today. Outside, protests quieted on the courthouse lawn, signs drooping in the cooling dusk. But the air buzzed, horns honking downtown, voices carrying her name through the mountain streets. Naomi sat in her chambers, robe off, hung neatly now, the splintered gavel on her desk, its cracks a map of the day's war. Her phone lit her brother, Jamal, his voice rough with relief. You okay, sis? Yeah, she said, soft, tired, her fingers tracing the gavel's edge. They're not. He laughed, a gravelly sound. City's talking, cops shook, streets lit up. Watch your back, though. Heard Boone's got pull. She nodded, unseen, her mind replaying Vance's glare-cold, venomous Boone's flush, a furnace of rage barely banked. I will, she said, her voice steady, despite the weight settling in her chest. The chief called next Dan Hargrove, his rasp strained through the line. They're suspended, facing charges, DA's on it. Felony counts stacking. But Boone's connected unions rumbling. Some old boys circling wagons. Naomi's pen paused over her next case file. Another drug bust and another cop's name she recognized. Officer Reed, a Boone ally. Let 'em rumble, she said, her tone cool, resolute. Laws the line cross it, they fall. Hargrove sighed, a long exhale. You're stirring a hornet's nest, hope you're ready. She set the phone down, a note slipping under her door, unsigned, block letters scrawled in black ink. This ain't over. Her pulse quickened, then settled. She'd faced worse, from courtroom sneers to street threats. Her calm, a shield forged in decades of fire. Downtown, Boone and Vance sat in holding separate cells, concrete cold, the air sour with sweat and bleach. Boone paced, fists clenched, his badge gone, stripped with his uniform, now just a man in a polo and jeans, his broad frame taut with fury. She set us up, he growled, voice echoing off the bars, his boots scuffing the floor. Framed us, gonna pay for this. Vance slumped against the wall, cuffs off, his lean face drawn tight, staring at the peeling paint. No, she won, he muttered, defeat sinking into his bones, his hands limp in his lap. We overplayed dumb as hell. The precinct hummed, cops whispering in the halls, split down the middle, some nodding at Naomi's grit, muttering, "She's right, law's law," others grumbling, "She's out for blood," loyalty fraying like old rope. Boone kicked the bar's clang echoing through the block, anger simmering, a plan flickering in his haze. Union pull, a favor from his cousin on the force, a lawyer with dirt, a way back or out. He leaned against the bars, breath fogging the metal, eyes narrowing. His cousin, Officer Kyle, passed by. A quick nod exchanged, a silent promise. Vance watched, silent, his mind elsewhere, her voice looping. No one's above the law, his fight draining, replaced by a cold, creeping doubt. Naomi drove home, the Blue Ridge Mountains framing Asheville's dusk, their peaks dark against a fading sky, the air cooling as shadows stretched long over the winding roads. Her radio buzzed, news cutting through static. Judge arrests cops, justice or revenge. Asheville divided. She clicked it off, parked in her driveway, the engine ticking as it cooled. The note waited in her pocket. This ain't over its weight, a quiet prod. She stood on her porch, the city below, alive. Protests fading into murmurs, questions rising like smoke. Her next case loomed, Reed's bust. Another fight brewing, another shadow stretching toward her bench. She'd reclaim it tomorrow, unshaken but watchful, her hand resting on the railing, steady despite the hum of unease. Inside, she sat at her kitchen table, lamplight soft on her face, file open, Reed's name in bold, 3 prior complaints, a pattern too familiar. She wrote a note. Check precinct logs, cross-reference. Her pen steady, deliberate, then paused. The threat's scrawl flickering in her mind. This ain't over. Her phone buzzed. Jamal again. Protesters left you flowers, courthouse steps. She smiled, faint, then stood, peering through her blinds. Streetlights glowed. Shadows shifted. A car idled 2 blocks down. Headlights off, engine a low hum. She watched it a moment, 5 seconds, 10, then let the blinds fall, her breath even. Her resolve a quiet flame. Boone stared through his cell bars. Kyle passing again. Another nod. A whisper. Unions meeting, hang tight. His fists unclenched, a smirk twitching anger, banking into something colder, sharper. Naomi locked her door, file shut. The car outside pulling away slow, tires crunching gravel. Asheville waited, scales tipping, echoes unanswered. Her power reclaimed, his fraying, a city caught between. Thank you all for watching this video. Please comment and let me know what you think about this story. Please like and subscribe to watch more great content on my channel.